So my name's Andy Wyatt. I'm a part of the Manimation working committee, but I also work for Toon Boom. So I want to introduce the panel, if that's okay, to come up. We have Helen Brown from CHF Entertainment and Steve Sharman from Hackthorn Innovation. So we're going to have a little bit of a discussion. But before, I'm going to sit down and do this actually. So before we start, I just wanted to, if we go to the next slide, please, Matt. When we were, as part of the Manimation committee, we were trying to think of lots of subjects of things to talk about in this very eclectic day of different panels, and we came up. I suggested we do a panel on workflows and data management, and I think most people's response was probably something similar to Homer Simpson behind us. But I think it's quite important to talk about something like this because it's very much part of the production process. And technology has moved on so far now that things are developing all the time. So I thought it'd be really interesting to have a kind of an overview of the landscape of what is out there to help producers and production companies with so many co-productions going on as well. What is out there to manage your assets? I've been working in this business about 25 years, and one of my first jobs was working for the Disney studio on a feature film, DuckTales the movie, and I was an animation checker, which meant that I had to go through and actually collate all the physical assets together, ready for the camera. So cells, backgrounds, all the artwork basically ready for camera, that was all physical assets, and that was complex enough. We had thousands and thousands of different pieces of cell that all had to be kind of tracked and managed, and there was, as a consequence, there was people walking around the studio with clipboards trying to keep hold of where everything was. And I reckon that probably even with the most complex analog production, we probably had probably by about 6,000 assets per minute was probably the most you could possibly think of, because we were limited by technology, because you could only actually have 4, maybe 5 levels of cell before the opacity of the cell kind of put a kind of a color tint on the background. Backgrounds, you could only have a certain amount of layers for the multiplane effects, so maybe 5 layers. So you couldn't really have that many assets for a production. But now, of course, when you're working with digital animation, it's all basically data. So there's no limit now to the amount of assets that a production could have, and you could easily have an excess of 200,000 or more, independent individual bits of assets. This is where I was going to introduce, just bring in Toon Boom, because. Toon Boom, we're a Canadian company, and we work in any style of basically 2D animation, and we're used all over the world, 120 different countries. And a lot of our studios came to us to say that, is there anything that you can do to help us kind of manage those assets that's user-friendly and is easy to set up? And people were very... respected our technology. We'd won awards for sort of our technology. So what Toon Boom did, we kind of bought an existing company, a platform called Tactic, which is a data management system, and we kind of turned that into what we had as called Toon Boom Producer, which adds to our portfolio of products. So now for our studios that are producing 2D animation, we have Storyboard Pro, which is our kind of pre-production software. We have Harmony, which is the 2D production, and then Producer now, which kind of links all together as a kind of a data management software. So I'm not going to sort of talk too much about it, but I just wanted to show you a little bit of a clip of the promo of it, and then I'll get Steve to talk about the whole landscape of what else is out there.
With so many moving parts, producing high-quality animation consistently and delivering on budget can be a real juggling act. Studios in the animation business know that behind every frame of animation is a complex production process. Every project has its deadlines, and any time lost takes its toll on the schedule and ultimately on the budget. You need a solution that helps you manage the pipeline to ensure your productions go smoothly. Introducing Toon Boom Producer for asset management and production tracking. Producer helps you build, track, and manage your pipeline, seamlessly integrating with Harmony and Storyboard Pro. It's a complete production management solution that's easy to use and adapts to your workflow. You can manage tasks for every contributor in your production team, monitor the status of each asset and every shot, schedule reviews and approvals whenever they're needed, and throughout the process, you're totally connected to Harmony and Storyboard Pro. So if you are looking for a production management solution that offers powerful workflow control, connected animation processes, and digital asset management, check out Toon Boom Producer.
Okay, so it does synchronize with Harmony and Storyboard Pro, but it's not exclusive. It does work with any kind of media, any kind of film files, still files, or whatever it is that you need. The workflows can be easily created by anybody. It doesn't have to be a developer. Anybody can produce these kind of workflows by dragging nodes to produce a workflow. And it's very simple to set up, and you're only limited really by the size of your studio servers. It's web-based, so anybody can log in remotely to look at the work and track the process of it. Because it's created with nodes, your workflow will then be replicated in this very familiar kind of chart. So the whole process of the animation pipeline can be kind of tracked. And each shot, you can allocate tasks to whoever's going to be doing those particular jobs. And the status of those shots can be checked by the producers as you go along. And of course, it's also a review tool, so that's anybody supervising, directors or anybody can sort of check the progress of each shot, can make comments, send it back for revisions, or ultimately approval once it's been signed off. So it's a kind of very a flexible and robust system, and then we're rolling out to lots of studios throughout the world at the moment, and it's getting very, very good feedback. So anybody does want to talk about it, come and talk to me later today. I'll be more than happy to talk to you about it. But I'm not here to sell you this. What I wanted to do was really kind of look at how technology in this area has moved on since the days of whiteboards and post-it notes on walls, and where it's going to go in the future. So I'll hand you over to Steve, who's going to give us a little bit of a kind of overview.
You'd hope so. You'd hope so, wouldn't you? There we go. Yeah, that's quite good, isn't it? So I should probably also say, so my kind of day job for 30 years, blimey, has been helping storytellers use technology to make their lives better, to make things more efficient, to kind of give better creative outputs. I also have a current kind of other day job, which is I run the architecture, delivery and solutions team at UKTV. And it would be remiss of me not to remind anybody in the room that we do have a thing called UKTV Originals. So if you've ever thought about how to get some animation onto Dave, that's probably where you should go and look at it. Anyway, so plug over. So some of the conversations that I've kind of seen in the past have gone a little bit like this, which is that we need some tools to kind of help the process along. So yeah, that's a good idea. There's some really good stuff around, but it's all a bit expensive, and we haven't got much money. But there's this really great free stuff. So what we'll do is we'll stick it all in folders, and that'll work. That'll be fine. We can track everything in there, and then there's this thing called Dropbox, and we'll track everything so we can share it with everybody all around the world. And this kind of conversation usually ends up in a question like, did you just delete the really important don't delete folder off Dropbox? So having kind of seen that many those sorts of conversations so many times, I really wanted to start off by talking about things that we technologists kind of really, really don't like. And the first thing we don't like is somebody coming along and saying, I need a system for. Because what that usually means is that everybody's thought about the what is it you need a system for, and you haven't thought about the why is it do you need a system, because you should always kind of remember that that's a system, and in many ways that can be a really good system. It's compact. You don't need, well, I suppose you do need to back it up, but you don't have to take the battery out of it to go on an aeroplane and so on and so forth. And I should really keep track of my notes as well as flicking the slides along, shouldn't I? So it's kind of worth thinking about when you go out into the market, because the one thing I have found kind of working with storytellers over a long period of time is that the reason that people are trying to tell stories is because they love storytelling. It's not because they love technology. And people like me in the engineering part of what we do, we kind of look after all the hot and heavy stuff, and we tend to forget that a little bit. And it's really good to be reminded that there are certain reasons that we kind of that we actually bring systems in. So we bring systems in to save time, and we bring systems in to save money, and the two things are pretty synonymous. Increasingly important, I think it kind of resonates with some of the messages this morning about Brexit and talent and so on. Quite often we're bringing systems in to make it easier to collaborate across a team, either because you're working in remote locations, or because you're actually fed up with people stepping on each other's toes. A number of times that people have kind of, I've worked on that thing and you've worked on that thing, and you have to then kind of waste the rest of the day reconciling what you did and I did. That happens a lot, and we're starting to kind of take a lot of the tools from my world, the kind of the tech world, and bring them quite nicely into the story world to help us do that. Other reasons we do it is because we want to, and I think the session that you've just seen on the Beano, absolutely fantastic. I love that because it's a brilliant example of how you need to reuse stuff. It's what's the storytelling potential that you can get, and obviously the revenue that can accrue if you can very quickly take something and repurpose it in a different way. Whether it's taking something which is on TV and going online, whether it's taking a game and going online, whether it's taking a game and bringing it onto TV. If you don't have the kind of the creative will, but B, the systems to back that up, then that becomes quite difficult. And the other thing that you need to do is increasingly, and this is something we kind of hit when things started going from tape to files in production, is that you need to be able to show your investors and your insurers that you're actually protecting your assets. So the really cute dog there is clearly a really vicious bulldog who's going to protect your assets. And other reasons why you might want systems is because you actually need to solve a very particular sort of problem. So when you're thinking about the systems, then your tech people are there to help you. But the first thing you kind of got to remember to do is whatever you want to do, write it down. There's no better way to get to understanding the systems and the technology that you need by, first of all, working out what the goal is that you're trying to do. Are you trying to save money? Are you trying to save time? Are you trying to get better collaboration? All those things I just talked about. Then when you know what you're actually trying to do, if you know that, then you know whether you've succeeded or failed when you brought it in. And this is kind of massively motherhood stuff, I know, but you'd be surprised how many people just do a system because it sounds like a really good idea. Even in the kind of days where none of us have got much money to do things. I sit in a business that kind of earns 400 million quid a year, and we have to justify everything that we do, quite rightly so. So there's a whole point around, once you understand what you're trying to do, then you need to work out what people are going to do and how the workflow is going to work. You've got whole decisions to make about have you got the capability to do it yourself? You've got a digital team. Does it make sense to build it, or do you go out and do you buy it? And the other thing that everybody always forgets, and whenever you're running a technology project, is always the first thing to drop out is the training budget. It's don't forget that there are no such things as technology projects. There are only people projects, and technology is there solely to help people. So if you bring something in and you're not training people how to use it, and you're not letting them get the best advantage out of it, then you're not going to get the creative outputs that you're looking for. And also, please don't forget to do things like make sure that you say, great, buy this great big new thing, and forget to kind of back it up and so on, because that doesn't work particularly. Talk to everybody. We've all done. I think about 10 years ago, the sort of pitch was, you should talk to me about this because I've been involved in pretty much every project that's failed using it for the past 10 years. There are lots of folks out there who have failed at doing things, and always try and learn from failures in introducing technology, because there's nothing easier to do than fail on a technology project. And I'm saying this as a technologist. So that's kind of the little sort of tortured appeal from the technologist on the panel about how we should do things. But let's kind of think a little bit about where things are going. So Andy's just spoken about a very specific new great thing. Generally, when we're putting systems together, and I've purposely ignored the massive, dreadful mess which is, once you've created it, where does it go? because that's just that's just really quite unpleasant. How do you get it to, you're working with Amazon, how do you get it to Amazon? How do you deliver it in the right way? How do you get all those language tracks done? That's that's kind of quite a big story, and you'd have to make me drink quite a lot before I'm prepared to talk about it again. But in terms of things that we're doing, most workflows out there are a combination of kind of three things. I mean, if you're in a big company, there's usually a third one, which is move, but it's the make and the manage, and then it's how do you kind of collaborate whilst you're doing it. So it's very kind of super simplified cartoon version of this is that we're all using a bunch of tools, and that'll be a bunch of tools that we're using to kind of create creative outlook assets and so on. So things like Adobe Creative Suite, obviously other things are available. Toon Boom, Cell Action, we might well then be taking sort of the outputs of our kind of creative endeavors, running them through things like render pipelines to give us final outputs, so involving stuff like maybe Pixar's RenderMan. All of that stuff kind of comes together, and all of its kind of different versions, and I'm going to use the M word, which obsesses media technology people the world over, which is metadata. It's like, it's all very well having the thing. If you don't know what it is and you can't describe it and you can't find it, then you don't have it. It's so there's a kind of, all these things need to hook into this kind of layer, which is all about, I've got stuff, I need to manage it. So there's things like Producer that Andy's just spoken about, other tools out there kind of more generally in the industry, things like VidiSpine, which is a very good asset management system from some friends of mine in Sweden. Then there's kind of a whole managed thing, which is this piece around, well, what you're effectively doing is a bunch of project management and getting people to work together in a creative endeavour to give me the output. Everybody always hates any part of referring to the process as being part of the factory, but once you get into actual production of assets, that's kind of what it is a little bit. Sorry, creative people. But there are good tools out there to basically say, this is what we need to do, how much have we actually got done, are we going to sit within budget, are we actually going to finish it on time, because if we don't, we've got budget problems, and we've also got kind of revenue delivery problems and so on. So being able to track on what's happening, and again, there are systems out there, Producers One, there's a system out there called F-Track, there's another one that Autodesk bought a couple of years ago called Shotgun, other stuff out there that you can take and make and customize yourself. And then there's the whole sort of piece around this is around, it's all people process. And therefore there are places, lots of places for tools that, there are lots of kind of tools. There are lots and lots of tools out there for just getting people to talk to each other. Again, if you're working in a very distributed way, there are lots of tools that we should come from kind of the software industry that we use a lot. Things like Slack, which is a really good messaging tool, but then hooks into all the rest of your stuff, so you know what's going on. There's stuff like Skype. There's stuff like Zoom, and then there's all the really kind of boring and ordinary stuff like collaborating on documents and spreadsheets and so on. So that's Office 365 and Google Apps and all the really kind of boring things. But the kind of key thing is, again, it's when you're looking at this picture, it's thinking about what your workflow is, what do you do, and where do the savings come from. So just kind of looking at these things again a little bit. So we talk about asset management, and what do we mean by asset management? It's basically a system that manages the bucket of content that you've got. So all those kind of different types of files, and quite often it's not just kind of storing them like you do on a C drive. It's then doing useful things with them. So, for example, if you're doing an animation project, it's taking your storyboard and then automatically replacing the frames with the finished images as you go through, so that you can see a whole sequence end to end and see how it actually builds and renders. And it's things like keeping track of versions and comments and so on and so forth. So it's having it. It's making sure it's backed up, it's secured, because another kind of maxim is if you haven't got 2 copies of something, you haven't got it. Because you've only got one, that one will go at the most inopportune time. And anybody that's sitting with a load of hard drives in your cupboard right now that you haven't touched for a year, you will have lost it, because the head's fused to the platters, and you hear a clicking noise when you try and start it. So go back and kind of get them off there, because that would be a bad idea. Good tools will kind of integrate directly. So the Adobe Creative Suite, for example, has this thing called Panels, so you can interact directly with asset management from where you're working. And there's some really good stuff. So you've got a combination of either best of breed stuff. So you've kind of got tools like VidiSpine, which is just simply, it's a really simple thing. Here are my assets. Here's a sequence. Here are the things that here I can search. Here I can find stuff. Here I can turn it into different formats. Here I can play what I've got. And then you've got sort of you've got stuff which is more kind of specialised to some of the environments that you work with, like Producer. Okay, so the next one is it's project management. So this is something which is kind of, as I said before, it's overlaying that media management. It's something which is managing activities. It's laying out your workflow. What are the kind of the tasks that you're doing, pretty much from left to right, to actually achieve something? What are the jobs that you need to assign to people? How do you know how far they've got through them, and so on and so forth? It's taking something that you know is happening, it's work, and it's making it visible to you. But again, those things work if people buy into them. So one of the big cultural changes I'm making with one of my teams at the moment is that we have a system for doing this, but they're not updating it every day. So I kind of know what they're doing every 2 weeks, but that doesn't help me because kind of 2 weeks to find out with 2 weeks late, 2 weeks later is not helpful at all. So again, there's kind of a big. People have to kind of get this into their daily workflow and also realise that it's not the police. It's not trying to kind of turn you into an admin person. It's just how we need to work to run the business. Stuff in here around things like review and approval and kind of just coordinating activities, including, say, shelling out to kind of tools to do rendering, for example, splitting out those jobs and making them happen in a cost-effective way, bringing all the different parts of the workflow together. Andy showed some pictures of Producer already. That's a kind of just a screenshot. So Google Images is wonderful because you can go through any presentation and say, give me an image which represents this thing, and it kind of gives you it, which is wonderful. So this is obviously something which is showing you here to get this kind of selection of projects done. These are the tasks that need to happen. This is kind of where we are on them, and these are the people that are working on them. And there's your implicit workflow. So again, it's the kind of stuff that in really sort of in industries that we'd never like to think of as analogues, like logistics and construction and so on, they've used tools like this an awful lot, and they're quite helpful. So what we need to do, I think, is to start bringing some more of these things into play. And then kind of finally, that appears to be some people collaborating by carrying a banana, which also indicates some of the problems with using Google Images. But there's a whole thing around, everything's a human project. We need to work together. Even me, even the technologists need to work together. So it's and if you're all together, that's absolutely fine. Increasingly, people are not. And increasingly, people are making, particularly in kind of creative industries, and we've kind of debated whether industry is a good word or not. People kind of involved in creative endeavours quite often want to have their lifestyle, so they want to be at home for whatever reason most of the time. So we need to have ways of communicating, getting that kind of face-to-face interaction, getting kind of instant responses to certain questions, but also being able to kind of shut down conversations so that you can get on and work when you need to. So that's stuff like it's really obvious things that you all use, like instant messaging, email, documents, and so on and so forth. And with those things, actually, really, you can start free and start to kind of add on features. I think things like Skype have kind of revolutionised kind of the ability for us to communicate. Well, it did until Microsoft bought it, in which case you can't do it anymore. But anyway, it's these sort of things are they're almost like the central hub for the process, really. Again, if you use something like Slack, it can kind of tell you when people have checked in assets and when people are starting work on things. So you kind of get a complete picture of what your team's doing without necessarily have to kind of bother them and say, what are you actually doing? You're working on that thing. So that's kind of that's Slack, and of course there's two things in here. This is one is kind of a thing, one is an appeal, which is so that's kind of the Slack interface. It's showing people communicating, and also the other thing is going back to what I said before. Don't just get something because it's got an iPhone interface, because that's not the most important reason why you buy it. Two more things briefly, if I may. One is that I think it was mentioned this morning, kind of the use of the cloud. Now, the cloud kind of distinguishes itself by everybody talking about it, nobody actually really understanding what the hell it is. Basically, it's a bunch of computers elsewhere managed by somebody across the internet that you can use. But it has actually revolutionised a lot of the way that we're able to work, because it's shifted a lot of investment from I need to buy all this stuff before I can get started to paying as you're going along. So all of the sort of tools that I've just been talking around, things like VidiSpine, things like Stacks, things like Abstract, you can kind of go and buy those for a few dollars or a few pounds a month and keep them as long as you need them. Then provided that you can get the data out of them, which is something really to think about, you can then kind of shut them down. You can scale them down as you go. And that's been a big difference to the way people operate. Some ways finance directors don't like it. And the reason that finance directors don't like it is because any time something is pay as you go, it becomes unpredictable. Capital cost is easy to spend out, and you can depreciate it over a period of time. Anything which is it's elastic certainly makes our CFO kind of break out in hives. It's also, you've got 1,000 people at Amazon looking after making it secure, and it's able to scalable. So in the future, we've got the whole thing coming into the cloud. So what's coming along? This kind of big thing that's coming along is kind of the impact of things like artificial intelligence. Big hype. At the moment, you can say it's kind of hype to hysteria. It's either going to save the world, it's going to kill us all, but there are some really smart examples of how AI can help at the moment. There's a little company called X.AI at the moment, which helps you does nothing things but organise meetings. We're starting to get to the point where where we've got tools building things like Adobe can help do really boring things like road scoping automatically. So there's lots of interesting stuff kind of coming along to add to the tools that we've got. And the kind of final sort of thing to think about is that if you break down your workday, if you can use technology to save kind of about 40 minutes every day in what you do, then actually you're buying yourself back a day every fortnight. And I suspect I've spoken too long. So there you go.
No, that's thank you, Steve. That's brilliant. Just as a general overview of the landscape, and I wanted to bring in Helen here to kind of react to that, I guess, and maybe to talk about some of your experiences within your experience of managing productions.
Yes. Well, I started off in stop motion animation, and I think when you start off in stop motion, you learn how to manage your assets really well, because you've only got a set number of puppets and props and sets, so you do have to be extremely organised. And moving over to 2D, it was great to have that flexibility of as many props and puppets and sets as you needed at any one time, but making sure that everybody was following the same file naming conventions and they were being moved around in the right way became even more important. So just a few of the tips, I suppose, I wanted to share of how we manage our assets in the studio. We don't have an asset management system in place at the moment, but we are talking to Toon Boom about Producer next year, and possibly to Steve about some of the products you might be able to offer us. Because at the moment we've got 2 long-form series in production. We're producing Daisy and Ollie, which is 52 minutes of 2D at the studio. And then we're also producing the 3rd series of Pip Ahoy, which we're doing the pre and post production in Wilmslow, and then we've outsourced all of the core animation to China. So there's a lot of assets being pushed around. And as we go into 2018, we're going to be making 10 to 12 short form series a year, interstitials and webisodes and things like that. So the number, although it's only an additional 120 minutes of animation, just having 14, 15 productions going through the studio within next year, the demands on our time is going to be immense. So we really do need to start thinking about something for next year.
Okay. We've only got literally a couple of minutes left, and I know you've got a little surprise you wanted to show at the end as well, potentially.
Yes.
I just wanted to ask one question for Steve. You mentioned AR, and are robots going to be eventually taking over studios? And is the role of a production coordinator, production manager,
No.
on the cut? Oh yeah. Well, will there be a day where that's all going to be automated?
I tend to think not. Actually, I think that we've kind of. I mean, as I say, I spend kind of 4 days of my week in a storytelling business. We've had this debate an awful lot, and we see things like AI as supporting people's jobs and taking away the crappy bits, frankly. So that there may well be things where actually, if you're a production coordinator, get the tool to actually remap the plan when somebody's ill and tell you what it is. And that's the kind of the boring bit of what you do. The interesting bit is actually kind of getting the people together and motivating the team and getting it delivered. So completely agree with you. It shouldn't take away people's jobs.
Yeah, and the one thing I would say is that production meetings, going back to old-fashioned production meetings, I demand that our team have them daily, you know, when we start a new production, because still talking is the best form of communication, and you really can't replace that. So no matter how busy everybody is, I always demand that those meetings still go ahead as regularly as possible, really. And also sitting your key people together. I find that, you know, we make sure that the compositing team are situated next to our animation directors, the designers are sat next to the rigging department, so that everybody is constantly communicating. You cannot replace that, I don't think.
I completely agree. And again, it's all industry is about people, and this more than many others. So the technology is just there to help. It's not there. People kind of get involved, think that technology is there for its own end, and it really isn't. It's all about kind of making what you guys do actually as good as it can be.
Okay, well that's brilliant, and we're going to wrap it up there because we've just literally got 2 minutes left. But thank you so much for that. I hope that's just, I mean, it's just a tip of the iceberg, literally. But I just thought it'd be interesting to kind of just start talking about an area like this. Did you want to introduce this?
Yeah, I've brought a clip along with us to show today that isn't really about asset management and workflow, but I thought it was a nice light-hearted way to end this seminar. It's a clip of some outtakes that we filmed earlier in the year for Daisy and Ollie. It's just the cast recording in a voice record and some outtakes. So we can roll that.
Daisy and Ollie love finding out. Daisy and Ollie finding out about what, why and how. Everybody.
Okay, can't wait.
I don't know what it was. I just spat everywhere.
That's good. Thanks for that.
How can that help answer my question about postman?
Whoa, that's another cartoon. It's very close.
He's had a long day.
Hang on, I haven't done the sleep
Oh,
bark.
sorry. Oh, the sleep bark, of course.
I've been preparing
I'm
this.
waiting for this.
That's it.
Oh, that was it. Right, sorry. You nailed it.
Yep,
Nailed it.
Thank you.
That's dreadful.
Is that bad?
No, that was good.
You just did a sleeping dog that sounded like Daddy Pig, and I said nothing. How dare you?
But why isn't he in bed?
Oh, what? That was the.
Was that you or the owl?
That was the.
Or Herbie?
That was very much my arm on the.
Whoa, little fella, those are my cabbages.
Come on, little snail. Let's find something else for you to nibble on.
What? What? Did you say nobble? I think you might have said nobble. Just thrown it out there.
Daddy, is my granddad from Botswana too?
No. Don't be stupid. No, sweetheart.
I'm loving that. We'll stop there.
Yeah, I think we should.
Thank you very much. So thank you for that session, guys. Thank you very much.